Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Where are all of our superhero lovers at? Cause today we're diving into a supe who graced our screens long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe swept us off our feet. And I'm not sure how many of you have heard of him, but get ready since you're in for a special treat today. We're exploring M.A.N.T.I.S, a long-forgotten superhero TV series that aired back in the 90s and went through enough controversy for a lifetime. So grab your popcorn, and it's lights, camera, and action. Let's get started. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you liked our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. So back in the early 90s, long before Sam Raimi had created his Spider-Man trilogy, a masterpiece for sure, he was trying out something different. And we mean different. He had already dabbled in this weird sci-fi superhero genre with Darkman, which revolved around a mentally unstable scientist. Yep, go check it out if you haven't already. But this time, he was working with Sam Hamm, yeah, the same guy who helped write the 1989 Batman, to create the first ever live-action black superhero to star in his own TV show. So together they created M.A.N.T.I.S, which stands for Mechanically Augmented Neurotransmitter Interception System, and hit Fox in 1994. It was about a black, disabled hero who's also a scientist and vigilante, played by none other than Carl Lumbly. You can imagine what a crazy movie that was back then. Today, we see Sam Wilson take up the mantle of Captain America and Idris Elba's Bloodsport or even Frozone from The Incredibles. But this definitely wasn't the reality back then. And this wasn't even tokenism. The show was actually going to deal with some heavy societal issues, such as race and power. Fox was so ambitious and sure of this that they launched it with a big 2-hour pilot movie and paired it with X-Files, airing them on the same night. But unfortunately, things got derailed along the way, and even this pairing couldn't save M.A.N.T.I.S from what was coming. But first, let's talk about the plot that set it apart from every other superhero concept. So the premise revolves around Dr. Miles Hawkins, played by Carl Lumbly, who's a self-made millionaire and brilliant scientist. Except during a police riot, he was tragically shot in the spine while he was trying to save a child. The bullet was actually fired from a police sniper, but that could never be proven. Naturally, that left him paralyzed from the waist down, restricted to a wheelchair. But hey, Hawkins doesn't just give up. He tries to fight the injustice by filing a lawsuit and taking the legal route. Does it work? No, of course not. He loses the lawsuit since apparently the bullet that hit him wasn't an official police bullet fired from an official police gun. Yeah, sounds about right to me. Not only does all of this make him angry and frustrated, it also hanged his conservative political views to a more liberal stance. And then came the last straw. He found out that there was a massive conspiracy unraveling right under his nose that was actively targeting the black community, involving a whole nexus of politicians and law enforcement officials. All of this lights a fire under his ass, and he pours his company resources, much like Bruce Wayne, except he's self-made and not a nepo baby. Oops, sorry Batman fans. And uses his wealth to create a high-tech exoskeleton, which is called, no points for guessing, the M.A.N.T.I.S suit. This suit not only lets him walk again, but also gives him super strength, speed, and special tech like bulletproof black body armor, and paralysis darts in his wrists. And, much like Batman, he too has a secret lair, a man cave, or should I say a M.A.N.T.I.S cave, get it? Which is a secret underwater lab below his mansion. He also has a flying car cum submarine called the Chrysalis, because why not? But most importantly, he used all this tech to shed light on systematic injustice and fight the widespread racial conspiracies. This was the heart of the show. That's what sets it apart from other superhero films. And to submit their bold move, they had a mostly black cast and writers for authenticity. Apart from Lumbly as Dr. Miles Hawkins, there was Gina Torres playing a pathologist, a potential love interest called Dr. Amy Ellis. Then Bobby Hosea played reporter Yuri Barnes. Steve James played a youth club manager Antoine Pike. Wendy Raquel Robinson and Christopher M. Brown were African students interning for Dr. Hawkins, but also secretly helping him when he's M.A.N.T.I.S. And the late Galen Gorg played Lieutenant Leora Maxwell, another confidant and love interest for Hawkins. Needless to say, this was very courageous, especially given the context of the increased police brutality towards the black community during the 90s. After all, the Rodney King riots had only occurred like 3 years ago, and it hadn't been long since the officers responsible had been acquitted. However, the critical reception was mixed. While some praised the concept and how it subverted prevalent black male stereotypes of the 1990s media by providing a hopeful and inspiring superhero while still maintaining a stylish atmosphere and tone, others ripped it apart. Los Angeles Times said it's the kind of movie that can give an insect a bad name. People criticized the lack of action sequences, the supposedly convoluted storyline, and the overwhelming number of characters for a pilot. And this is when things started becoming messy. As expected, Fox executives weren't too happy about the final result of the pilot and how it felt to the world back then. They were apparently worried that the show was too urban, too raw, and too political. They thought the pilot would alienate parts of their audience, particularly the white audience, and also maybe piss off some hella influential people. So while they did indeed create a M.A.N.T.I.S series after the pilot, they changed pretty much everything. The show lost its original essence. The recasting was probably one of their most jaw-dropping and standout changes, as if they weren't even trying to be subtle in their attempts to whitewash the show. Remember the whole list of black cast members we mentioned just a little while back? Everyone other than Galen Gorg, who played Lieutenant Leora Maxwell, was dropped from the series. Of course, Lumbly stayed on as Dr. Hawkins, but that was it. Apparently, they wanted to introduce multicultural changes. God only knows what that means. And that wasn't all. The premise and tone also underwent severe changes. Carl Lumbly actually later expressed regret about how the network significantly shifted the tone. At a SpaceCon panel, he said, "The pilot was the document. Here's another way to think about doing a superhero story. An individual who's betrayed by the state, injured severely enough to have to live his life in a wheelchair, who comes back without bitterness to do something about the kind of violence that put him in the chair. You should be able to stop crime without killing anyone." That, in Lumbly's view, was the heart of the show, but it got diluted. He also criticized the eventual producers that were brought in by Fox for lacking courage and vision. He said, "While we did the best we could with the series, the producers were not as courageous and didn't have the vision." And all of these issues led to the shambolic first half season. It pretty much lost its entire soul midway through the show. How did the plot change, you ask? Well, the show actually abandoned many of its initial political and socially conscious themes. It lost the whole political, racially motivated conspiracy angle that highlighted and held accountable the entire system. Instead, they narrowed the plot to just one individual, Solomon Box, an evil industrialist and Hawkins' former business partner. There were some costume changes. In the pilot, Miles wears a trench coat over his exoskeleton, and his helmet has special glowing lenses that can hypnotize people. How cool, right? But in the redesigned series, the trench coat is dropped, the mask is redesigned to have a skull cap, and the hypnotic powers vanish. And this still wasn't the end. Halfway through the show, there were some even bigger changes to the narrative owing to the low ratings of the show. Who's surprised? All of a sudden, they introduced an exaggerated sci-fi tone to the show with parallel universes, time travel, supernatural menaces like extra-dimensional men in black, mutant jellyfish women, clones, and ghosts. You can imagine how silly the episodes became. What was once a grounded story about race and injustice quickly devolved into your typical Monster of the Week serial. They even had an invisible dinosaur. Talk about going absolutely bonkers. It went from gritty and real to sheer fantasy fun. Of course, Raimi and Ham didn't like the changes and no longer wanted to be involved in the series. As expected, the show ended up pleasing no one. The few who actually praised the pilot for its bold premise turned their backs on this retooled, diluted version. And this marked the beginning of the end. It's such a shame, since they genuinely had something unique on their hands. Yes, the first live-action black superhero ever, but to add to that, our protagonist was also disabled. For 1994, that was pretty groundbreaking, and it's important to note that Hawkins' paralysis wasn't just some gimmick, but rather central to his identity. It formed his origin story that highlighted police brutality, and also acted as the main motivation throughout the pilot, where he doesn't just wallow in self-pity, but takes it into his own hands to fight the system. In this context, Lumbly's performance must be praised for its balance of strength, intellect, and emotional gravity. Unfortunately, as the show shifted tone, a lot of that promise dimmed. Hawkins' connection to his community and his relationships, which were extremely important, were gradually erased and diminished. While Fox insists that its Mantis changes were made for creative reasons, many others disagreed, including Gina Torres, who said there's something more behind it. Essentially, all the network interference really screwed them over, but the show did still set the stage for future, more successful, and I mean way more successful, and faithful shows that did justice to this idea of a black superhero. Take for example the CW series Black Lightning that centers around Jefferson Pierce, a black hero who balances being a high school principal by day and vigilante by night. And in the meanwhile, his family navigates systemic issues like gang violence, political activism, and police misconduct. The show definitely doesn't shy away from social justice. In fact, co-creator Mara Brock Akil said, "We haven't seen many African-American so-called superheroes. You're able to explore our humanity." Meanwhile, the villain, Tobias Whale, portrayed by Marvin Jones III, is a black man with albinism, which shows the show uses color to explore prejudice even within black communities. So you can imagine the depths to which Black Lightning went. Something that was severely missing from Mantis. And then there's the more recent shows like Supercell 2024, which have further carried forward this legacy. It centers around a modern black British ensemble whose superpowers arise from a shared genetic history of sickle cell disease. The series very effortlessly weaves together themes of race, health, and community. But let's go back to 1994. What ended up happening to Mantis? Despite the OG heavy hitters behind this concept, Mantis struggled at every step. It aired on Friday nights, which was a remarkably difficult spot that really didn't garner enough viewership. Add to that, the audience ratings kept sliding and never had the chance to recover. And soon the show was cancelled. Even that canceling was messy AF. The finale on Fox aired poorly, and 2 episodes didn't air on the network at all. Basically, although a total of 22 episodes were produced, only 20 aired on Fox by March 3, 1995. The final 2 episodes, called Ancestral Evil and Ghost of the Ice, never made it to Fox's original run. Instead, they were shelved and only shown later on the Sci-Fi Channel in September 1997, more than 2 years after the network cancellation. You'll be even more disappointed when I tell you about the finale, Ghost of the Ice. If you don't want spoilers, mute us for the next few seconds, but honestly, the spoiler is so underwhelming. It isn't even a spoiler. Ghost of the Ice introduces an invisible dinosaur in its plotline. Why invisible? Because the CGI budget for a visible dinosaur wasn't available. And the show ends with the invisible dinosaur killing both Dr. Miles Hawkins and Lieutenant Leora, with John Stonebrake, who helped Hawkins create the Mantis suit, sealing off all the records and tech that they had used in order to prevent misuse. Writer Christopher L. Bennett mentions that in hindsight, the show's cancellation meant that even its series finale felt rushed and unsatisfying, and that when the last episodes eventually aired, they didn't feel like a true payoff as much as a footnote. All of this concluded the downfall of Mantis, which eventually disappeared and was rarely ever spoken about thereafter. So, was Mantis a pioneering failure or a missed opportunity? Well, kinda both. On one hand, it remains historically significant. It predates many of the modern efforts to have black heroes or heroes with disabilities on TV take center stage. And let's not forget how it sets up Carl Lumbly's future. After playing Dr. Hawkins, he also went on to voice Martian Manhunter in Justice League, and even more famously, he plays Isaiah Bradley in The Falcon and The Winter Soldier, as well as the recent Captain America: A Brave New World. But on the other hand, it's like this cautionary tale on network interference, which feels like the same old story repeating itself, honestly. When will these networks learn? They took a show that had so much potential and ran it into the ground. Christopher L. Bennett, who rewatched the show, said he was frustrated by how the promising character drama was abandoned in favor of ludicrous fantasy. Today, Mantis has something of a cult following. People on Reddit talk about how rad it felt, even as kids, to see a black, handicapped dude being a superhero. So yeah, it's safe to say that even though it was imperfect, at least it dared to do something different. In the pilot, of course. The show sucks. In case you want to watch it today, either out of sheer curiosity or even just to cringe at it, it can be found on Apple TV for $1.99 an episode. Marvelous verdict. Mantis started off hella ambitiously, with Raimi and Sam Hamm at the helm of it all, but as most such projects do, it faltered under the weight of network expectations and compromises. Nonetheless, it was an important step forward even if it failed. You could totally go check it out and let us know what you think in the comments below. And that's all for today, guys. If you enjoyed this rundown, leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more such content. We'll see you soon. Goodbye!